May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. My topic today is friendship with God. And the subtitle could be Camping Out with Jesus and Bearing the Fruit of Love and Joy. Today's message is part of a long dialogue Jesus shares with the disciples after he has washed their feet and before he was handed over to the authorities to be crucified. The conversation contains precious last words given in the final moments before his departure. There's something about last words that are endearing. When I have been with people in the last hours of their life, there's something that's very memorable about those moments, very precious about those moments. And Jesus is wanting to express something of the full extent of his love to his disciples. And he wants to leave them something that will endure, something that will help them through the trials that lay ahead of each of them. And so these are moments that are quite intimate. And I can well imagine that John remembered this time with great clarity. The love that Jesus had for his disciples was very strongly felt that night, and the impression he made was unforgettable as he burned these words into their memory: as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. These intimate words were intended to express the length and breadth of a love that existed with his relationship with the Father before creation even existed. He therefore wanted to give them a parting gift upon which they could depend on in times of trouble. And it is the gift of friendship, built upon a love that would bear all things, believe in all things, hope in all things, and endure all things. And it's a love that's built on abiding in him. And the word abide is not a word that we use much these days. But in this last discourse with his disciples, that word is used over and over again. In fact, it's used 11 times in 11 verses in the chapter that was just read from the gospel. And the word that's translated abide can also be translated as remain or stay. After the year we've had with the lockdown, quarantine, and physical distancing, we can all identify with the implications of that word, remain and stay. We basically had to remain at home, to stay there, whether we liked it or not. But we found that it was a safe place. It was a safer place to be. And therefore, when Jesus used this word, he wanted them to find a safe place. And he wanted them to have a staying power that would see them through tough times. To listen to Jesus' words with 21 ears is to be reminded of the things that need to keep us safe and secure. God's love is meant to be a home in which we live. It's intended to be seen, heard, and felt in tangible ways. When John introduced Jesus earlier in his gospel, he describes how the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The word picture he uses in the original literally reads, Jesus pitched his tent or camped out among us. Some of the most intimate times I've had with my family has been we camped out together and we stayed in close quarters. We happen to have an RV, and when my children join us, they're in the front of the RV and we're in the back. But it's tight and we're close. And there's something precious about that. There's something about remaining close and doing what we can as we light fires and share conversations and share stories. There's something wonderful and memorable about those times. And Jesus talks about love, but it's not the way we often use the word love that can be so trivialized and sentimentalized. It's a word that had an enduring quality to it. And so I like stories that bring love down into a tangible, felt experience where we can see it in action. I read a story this week about a pastor, an educator, who was really a wonderful example of this. He wanted to understand how to care for homeless people. So you know what he did? He disguised himself as a homeless person and lived on the streets. He wanted to know what they experienced. He wanted to know what they felt. He wanted to know, what were the problems that they were experiencing. And so he took the time and the effort to conceal his identity as he made himself look like a homeless person. It reminded me what Jesus did when he came and dwelt among us. He pitched his tent among us. And so this pastor went out and ventured out on the streets of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he discovered at one of the shelters he ended up in that in order to spend the night, they had to listen to a sermon beforehand. Well, he appreciated the guest speaker's message and wanted to talk to him afterwards, but as he reached out to shake the man's hand and asked if he could talk to him, he was totally ignored. He also witnessed other dehumanizing and sometimes cruel action towards those who suffered from mental illness, who were on the streets. And some of this even came from those claiming to serve them. So from these interactions, as well as support from his wife, who also worked as a mental health nurse for a number of years, he began to hear a call to serve not only the homeless population, but to help the least served population within the homeless community, those with mental illness. A compassion grew within him as he lived among them and pitched his tent among them. And thus, the Servant Center was born in 1993, and that Servant Center has borne much fruit. And there's much you can learn about it. What does it take to minister to people with mental illness? There's a sensitivity there. But it's one that's not trite, it's not trivialized, it's one that takes these issues seriously. Jesus took our issues seriously, and that's why he took the time to leave his home from heaven and live among us. And so abiding in that love is never an easy thing to do. Throughout history, the one driving force that has moved humanity forward has been the willingness of parents to make almost any sacrifice to ensure that their children would have a better life. Jesus said, "No one is greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." And of course, we see that, typically in a mother's love. I've got 3 children. Each one of them have children. Each one of them has spent sleepless nights with their kids and have struggled with what it means to care for children as they've laid down not only their life, but a night's rest or whatever it takes to care for the needs of their children. In a poem for Mother's Day written by John Killinger, he wrote, "I believe in the love of all mothers and its importance in the lives of the children they bear. It's stronger than steel, softer than down, more resilient than a green sapling on the hillside. It closes wounds, melts disappointments, and enables the weakest child to stand tall and straight in the fields of adversity. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my mom's love. She prayed with me, suffered greatly with my years of wandering, and often looked at me with great distress. But she hung in there for me. And I remember my last words to her as she was leaving me at college. And she was very worried about me and had every reason to be. And I won't tell you why, but she had every reason to be. And I said, "Mom, don't give up on me." And she didn't, thank God. Her love was made real, and it showed me that Jesus loved me even when I didn't deserve it. And I knew I didn't deserve it. And he even calls me his friend. That's an amazing revelation in the gospel. Marcus Cicero, one of the great thinkers of ancient Rome, described what it means to be a friend when he wrote, "Friendship improves happiness and abates misery. By the doubling of our joy and the dividing of our grief." I think he was on to something when he said that. There's something about the doubling of our joy and the dividing of our grief that true friends share. I just had a marvelous week and a half away, and we spent it with friends. Friends that we've had for many, many years. It started years ago when we were in St. Pete. And our relationship together has grown because it was nurtured. And it was because we stayed in touch with each other, even when it took time and effort. And it's really paid off in spades. There's something about staying in touch that's important for friends. Friendships need to be nurtured. And what an amazing gift they are when we have them. And there's times when I wonder, boy, I know I don't deserve this. And yet all friends are like that. We don't deserve them. And yet when it comes, what an amazing gift. And the joy that comes from it is surprising. And Jesus had something of that in mind for us when he gave us a command to love each other, when he gave us a command to abide in him, to stay in touch with him, to remain in him. He wanted us to know that these things are important, and it's important for not only their mental health, but their emotional well-being at large. We need each other. We need friends. And the church is meant to be that community of friends. We are friends of Jesus. And we can grow in our friendship with each other if we stay connected and if we help each other through hard times. In fact, it's through those hard times that we get to know each other. And I've also had the privilege of going on vacation with some of our friends. Now, boy, do you get to know each other when you do that, because you have an extended time. It isn't just a quick in and out. And we've had times when we've had to be honest, share our frustrations, and deal with things together that are very real. And yet, at the end of the day, those friends mean the world to us. And it's a relationship of love that makes our joy complete. And that's what this gospel is about today. Finding a completeness. When I think of the word complete, I think of the word wholeness. We need the wholeness that friendships and abiding love bring. So let's let our light shine. Jesus said, "I've chosen you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last." And part of that fruit, and like any fruit has to be nurtured, it has to be fed, and it just has, in every way, needs to be watered and cared for. But when it bears fruit, it's fruit that satisfies. So let's let our light shine and let others see this joy. And by seeing that joy, they'll become hungry for what we have. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.